So, going to talk about three similar events over a 7-year period that have marked similarities. I thought it would be a good example because it has to do with two different days. We're really only looking at 2 days that are important here out of the 20 days that these have this repeating and foretold type of situation where these days, as outlined, 7,000 years ago, even and up to today, they don't change. Nobody changes the descriptors of the days, so they've been the same for all this time. So we've got 3 contestants and 3 events and dates. So the Capitol insurrection. They always say January 6th. I say it was January 5th and 6th because it was put into action on January 5th. January 6th was the main physical event. Same thing with all of these. They weren't all planned on one day, but they did culminate on in a very tight grouping, both when you look at the dates of birth of these individuals and the date of the event itself. Okay, so we have the U.S. Capitol insurrection, which is technically is a self-coup. A self-coup is when somebody does something to keep themselves in power, like they already have the power and they're about to lose it, so they do something to keep it. That's a self-coup. The Turkish coup d'etat was actually a military coup, or an attempted. These are all attempted. None of them were successful. That's the other point about it. Because these are unsuccessful, we can be avoided and or sniffed out if you understand time. So the Turkish coup d'etat was strictly a military coup. They had done it before in Turkey, so it was kind of a thing they always kept, like a card they kept in their back pocket to use if they ever needed it again. It was severely overconfident, obviously compromised, so that one was thwarted on the same day. All these things pretty much happen on a single day. Wagner group, this was a rebellion, but it was really a fight between a civilian military and a state military, or a national military, individuals, you could say, because Prigozhin, I don't think he was looking to complete a coup. I think he was looking to go after the general, and he had a personal beef with, because they didn't want to, the Wagner group did not want to join the Russian military. So not really, the Prigozhin thing doesn't match in the enormity or the intent of the other two, but it is the same type of activity, and so I'll show you how that shows up. The commonalities are the leaders' dates of birth associated with Ajpu, and the date of the events are associated with Noj. The other common thing that happens is the arrests come later in the event of, in other words, they didn't arrest him that day. Prigozhin made it for exactly 60 days after he did his, and it was executed on the self-same day. And so I'll show you that at the end. But because I waited to do this until we had reached some kind of finality, because I kind of, everybody was kind of thinking, well, this dude's going to get snuffed out. So I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to sit here and watch, and we wait. That's how this is done. You have to watch and wait and see how things work out. Then you can go back and review it and say, yep, okay, these things are on time. Everything's on time. We have the correct day. They are doing things exactly and precisely in order. So even as events unfold in time, you are actually gaining tons and tons and tons of material evidence for verifying and continuous verification of these days. That's the job, continuously verifying these, because one of the things is we don't know the causation of these energies. We don't know anything about other than the fact that we've noticed them, can label them, and we've kept them for thousands of years. But you never know, so it's always kept track of. So they were all over in a day. That's how we knew when Prigozhin did his thing. I actually posted that. I said, it's going to be over in one day, because of the day it started. We just knew it. It was like, well, this is going to be over in one day. So, and then rogue factions of stable militaries are involved. So even when you have a stable military, there's rogue factions inside there. In the case of the U.S. one, I want to say it was the guys who took over the guys who were installed at the last minute and held off the phone calls of the National Guard, whatnot. That's all going to come up later. A lot of people don't have that information yet because they didn't dig real deep into the original stories when they came out. So, but if you go back to the original stories when they came out, there's actually already whistleblowers that have come out and talked about that. So, but that's, the U.S. is going to deal with this stuff for a long time. Russia's is over. Turkey's is over. We're going to be dealing with this one for a long time. Dirty laundry sells a lot of press. You have so here's the three guys. This is just incredible. So you got Ozturk, who arguably, by the way, I want to say this about Ozturk too. He definitely was not the only guy involved, but he was pinpointed as the leader by the Turkish investigation. They threw thousands of people into jail over in Turkey. Like literally, they were throwing teachers, judges, everybody was thrown into jail, if everybody remembers. Just tons. I think 11,000. I don't remember how many people, but that was just nasty. The way the response was very nasty. I don't particularly care for Erdogan. So Ozturk was born in the Tracina of Ashpu on the number 2. Trump was born on number 4 on the day of Akabal. Prigozhin was born on number 10 in Tosh. So all three of these guys, regardless of the year, month, or whatever, when you're tracking with this calendar, all three of these guys were born in the same Tracina. Now there's 20 Tracinas, so that's a 1 out of 20 shot to have all three of these guys born within the same Tracina. And this is why, because Ashpu has, like every other day, the negative and positive aspects of Ashpu can play out in a number of ways. You don't see a ton of negative aspects. The most negative aspect of Ashpu is the gun. So you can see where it's being misused. So you can see the glyph there. It looks like a gun, doesn't it? And this Mayan calendar business that everybody got into, I never got into that. I didn't want to know about the longer periods of time because you can't understand those unless you know the shorter ones. So technically speaking, if you go back to the day that everybody was hollering about, and this was all from one faction of, timekeepers that wanted to conduct this experiment of tracking a 5,000-year period, that's what that was. It's an experiment because every timekeeper knows you wait to see. But yes, you can make predictions sometimes, but you wait to see, and then you know. But in Ashpu, what happened on December 21st, 2012, the biggest thing in the news that day was a big press conference by the NRA in the United States. And I can only speak for the United States, but in our country on that day of December 21st, 2012, all the hype and everything led up. And what happened? Well, Wayne LaPierre gave this big speech of the NRA. And I said, wow, that's right on time. Okay, move on. So it's always better to know the smaller components because these are the same energies that happen over long periods of time, right? Like the ages. So it's the same with these days as it is with the sun signs or the decans. I don't really use the sun signs too much, just the decans. But in this, we're not doing any decans today. These are just strictly the days. These are very precise. So with Ajpu, it shows one treading on the tail of a tiger, which does not bite him. There will be progress and success. So there's somebody stepping on the tail of the tiger, but the tiger doesn't bite him. Kind of suggests that you're following the real power, right? That you are, or flirting with flirting with danger a little bit. That's the idea of the hexagram. But technically speaking, these are in the positive aspects, these people are the ones who are protectors, and it is energy of the sun and the eyes. So they can be great hunters. They're very good with money, very good with money. Double the money is one of the sayings with this sign. So you want to be careful when you go shopping, by the way, on this day too, because you could end up spending twice as much as you wanted to. It's just a thing. You can also receive twice as much as you thought you were going to get on that day too. It's a thing. Double the money is a thing. It's either whether it's going out or coming in. Just, I don't know. People can do whatever they want, but it just works out. But going down to the line 4, okay, in the hexagram descriptor, it shows its subject treading on the tail of the tiger, but he becomes full of apprehensive caution, and in the end there will be good fortune. So in other words, there was tons and tons of chances for all three of these guys to not do what they did, and that would have been the line for them to take, to be full of that apprehensive caution. Sometimes on this day, it actually is the energy of apprehensive caution. And even though you may have no reason to be fearful, there's 2 days in the pantheon that are very, very noted for this. One is Ajpu, the other one is Kame. And so on Kame, it's the fear of death, and on Ajpu, it's really more the fear of danger, or the fear of losing your stability or your finances. So in those kinds of fears, just general fear, really, on Ajpu. So that can be a little dangerous if you are not firmly fortified against, your own self, fears inside your own head. So, and then we go back to the third line, and this is the line which is what all of these guys actually did. Okay, this is the line, this is the path they all took. And it shows a one-eyed man who thinks he can see, a lame man who thinks he can walk well, one who treads on the tail of a tiger and is bitten. All three of these guys are bitten officially. Another reason I had to wait to make this video is because we had to say, well, wait a minute, Prigozhin hasn't been bitten. So we didn't have that element. So we waited, and sure enough, exactly 60 days after he made his incursion into Russia, he found his fiery fate. The tail of the tiger and is bitten. All this indicates ill fortune. We have a mere bravo acting the part of a great ruler. So that's why they fail. That's why it's a bad idea. But sometimes people get this idea on that day. Not necessarily people born in that Trocina, but these three guys are a little bit separate because they were in positions of great power in very powerful countries, but they were not the actual leader. They did not play the role of the great leader. Okay? And then on Noj, so this is the day they all get this idea. So this is movement. Noj actually is some of the, I think it's Aztec regarded as earthquake in the ancient stories of the Popol Vuh. It is the story of earthquake and how they get rid of earthquake by catching this giant crab or something. It's a crazy story. You should read the Popol Vuh. It's completely confusing, and shows how there's like this the differences between cultures can be very difficult to understand. But this is leader of age and experience. There will be good fortune and no error. So if you're a leader of good age and experience, good fortune, no error. But these are not generally the rulers. They're leaders. They can be great leaders of age and experience, full of wisdom, but the actual day and other people, you can have these young princes. So line 3 shows how the host may possibly have many inefficient leaders. There will be evil. So in other words, from the military perspective of Noj, because it is associated, this day is associated with military intelligence, you are going to have people in here that will get antsy and they make bad ideas. So here's the host having possibly many inefficient leaders. The next line is the host in retreat. The next line is birds in the field, which is like, okay, there's something out there we can go get. And if the oldest son leads the host, the younger men idly occupy offices assigned to them, however firm and correct he may be. There will be evil. Okay? So this is what it is. It's like they're talking here about the young. In the ancient feudal system, they would be the young princes who are assigned to different territories. And they will get the idea that they're not happy with what they've got. They want a little more. And we're just going to do this right now. And it often fails if the plans are such plans as the acquisition of additional power or additional territory on this day is likely to not be successful if you do not have a good plan. And if you do have a good plan, you're probably not going to do it on this day. But so, and then the last line, which is what we saw at the end of each one of these 3, is the great ruler, which is the one they're going to try to usurp, delivering the charges. And in the case of the U.S., it's the people. Okay, so that's a little confusing. In Turkey, it's definitely Erdogan. In Russia, it's definitely Putin. But in the United States, it's the people. So once that happened, the people, here comes all the chit-chat and everybody figures it out. And then they start delivering the charges. Same thing happened with Putin after Prigozhin did his. You start seeing all these orders going out of what to do and taking people in headships of clans. So this really is what Prigozhin was. He was the headship of a clan, and small men should not be employed in such positions. And I don't know about Ozturk too much, but I definitely would consider Prigozhin and Trump to be small men by every definition of that term as it relates to the I Ching and human sociology. These guys are small men. They're not going to lead anybody to greatness. They're in it for themselves. It's the downfall. Could do an Aqaba one for Trump, but that one really lays it out for him personally. But we're talking about the coups here. There are the attempted coups and the rebellions. So here's the graph for this. Arrow points to Noj. So 2 of the events happened on Noj, although arguably the U.S., it was the January 6th event was the next day on T-Hawks. And that is the day because the day after Prigozhin was found killed, we waited to have it verified, but well, at least, as much as we can. The verification is over. I mean, the guy could be run a little bit. Nobody's ever going to know. I think he's dead. So the day of the U.S. January 6th event was the next day on T-Hawks. So they were all planning it on the night of at the hotel the night before. The next day was the rally, but everything had already, not the actual attack of the Capitol, it kind of was. It was a crazy thing. It was a crazy, stupid thing. Look at how many people got arrested from this one. But I'm just saying that was the planning and the execution of it, the initiation of it was on the day of Noj. And the other one, the Turkey coup, which was actually a military coup, happened in the Tracina of Nos. So technically, if somebody wanted to be real technical, you could say, well, that doesn't count. It's like, well, it kind of does, because we're talking about an energy of Nos. Turkey took a little longer, but that whole 13 days is that energy. So if it happened in a different Tracina, or then I wouldn't count it, but it does count. So because it's in that Tracina, as you see, the birth dates of all these guys are in one Tracina. So probably could go back and look at all the coups. I didn't look at any coups that were successful. These are all failures. Okay. We can look at Prigozhin, who else is born on his day. There's Roger Payne. He did echolocation. So that guy made really smart choices. He was a great leader. Okay. This would be the great leader, Roger Payne. He said, hey, I think there's something to this echolocation. Let me go and test it. And we will bring this information back to the people, and hopefully it'll be useful for them. You see? So that's the idea of a great ruler, is the guy who takes his everything, all the gifts he's been born with, and use them for the good of all. And that's the idea. Unselfish. So he went out, he mapped a whale's echolocation. He mapped that whales, this is an interesting thing, good message for people all over the place. Always remember with your traditions, the whales actually allow the calves, the whales will sing this communal song. And at the end of the song, the young whales add their own individual little song to it. And then from that point on, it is kept. So that when those young whales grow up and they become the leaders of the I don't know if they call it a herd, a herd of whales, their song comes first. So do you see how it's constantly changing, but the tradition nonetheless remains, but the song changes. And that's the way it's a very poetic thing to know about another species, because that would be the proper way to conduct yourself in this ever-changing environment. Che Guevara, this guy was a doctor, decided to lead a revolution. He was successful to a very high degree, but what he was mad at, again, the quote there is, democracy cannot consist solely of elections that are nearly always fictitious and managed by rich landowners and professional politicians. So that's why they overthrew Cuba, threw all the rich people out of Cuba, and now it just sits there poor because we cut them off. And so that's what's going on there. I'm not a big fan of what they did. I'm just telling you what's going on. Anybody can go read, the story there. But Prigozhin, not even close. This guy rose up fast. He, you could kind of like say he became a revolutionary. He used to be a chef. Well, Guevara used to be a doctor and became a revolutionary. So that's what happened. And that's on Toj. It's the stage. So Prigozhin really screwed it up, didn't he? Then you have Ozturk. I got three guys immediately, right? Because he's born on a day that I have a lot of examples for, and there's a lot of people that do noticeable things. So Tu Amosh is the same day as Biden, and it's the same day as David Petraeus. Both of these guys are likely, well, Petraeus has already been in trouble. Not big trouble, but he's not, I don't know. He's not, as far as American generals go, not one of my favorites. And Biden likely could be heading for trouble. We'll see. He could be heading for trouble. There's trouble with money there, isn't there? So we don't know yet. We'll wait and see. I'm predicting there is. I hope we do have a twofer. I'd like to see a couple of presidents arrested, one from each party. That way, that should calm the situation down a little bit, and that would be what I would like to see, for the good of all. 9/11 happened on 6 Emosh. They got away with it. and it says right in under the bottom, that text at the bottom, this is text from the I Ching for that day. Shows the city wall returned into the moat. It is not time to use the army. And that's what everybody said on 9/11. After 9/11, we should have used the police. We didn't need to use the entire army. This was a police matter. There was a very limited number of individuals, and using the combined police agencies from across the world, we've got Interpol, we've got all these things, we could have easily just rounded all those guys up and handled it. But instead, we went and killed 1 million people in 20 years and grew a lot of opium. And we hooked everybody in America on opium, had an opium crisis. So it was cause for regret, you see. He will have cause for regret. So that's the other thing that happened there. But Ozturk, yep, there it is. Military, Ajpu, no good. No good. Building on Aqabal, very good. So these are all people born on Aqabal. Frank Lloyd Wright, born on the same day as Donald Trump, he built Falling Watt Wright, all these houses. He was a very good residential architect. He wasn't a great builder. I'm going to say this. He liked to build these very stylish places, but they didn't always hold up very well because he didn't always care about the material. When he did, they were absolutely wonderful, but some of them were, very notable architectural works, but not really. You may not want to have that house unless you've got a lot of. You like to have a high maintenance budget. But Zahi Hadid, arguably the best architect in the world during the course of her, probably during the final third of her career. She's passed now. She did a lot of things. She is her deacon. She is her day. She is an artist. She is a very, very good builder. And these are, she was an architect, but she's also more like a builder. Now, Donald, he's more like of a finance guy, and he puts his name on all his buildings. You notice that? You don't go around seeing Hadid on all the buildings, and you don't see Wright on the front of the buildings. So Donald Trump was more selfish, and that day warns about that. In fact, it's the only thing that can stop you on that day. On the day of Aqabal, you've got the world at your feet, and all you have to do is not be selfish. That's all you have to do. If you are just maintain a non-selfish service to the people around you, you will do just fine. And that is the back view. Well, it's actually, that's the White House underneath there. That's the house he wanted to keep. And it actually is, if you go back and look at the ancient glyphs for Aqabal in the 20 days, it actually is a building very, very, very much like that, because they were known, they used the temple as the glyph for that day. So in the ancient world, the temple would be the most magnanimous building in the city, and so that's what that is. That it's really, really close to the actual glyph of it. So, but he built that wall, and it's useless, and it only worked for like a couple of days. They just cut right through it. You can just go up to this thing, right? It's really shoddily built, like kind of little bit of a similarity with Frank Lloyd Wright, in that these guys build stuff. It can be fancy. It's high profile. It gets a lot of attention, but it's just not very well built. Like the people just came up to that fence, took one look at it, and said, "Go get me a battery-operated Sawzall. Bring an extra battery. I'll have you guys through here in about an hour and a half. Done." Yeah, so that's what happened with that. Now, Putin Z. So all the tanks go rolling into the, and I'm just throwing this in at the end. All the tanks, and everybody's like, "Oh, what's the Z? What's the Z?" Well, he is born on the day of Z. It's actually pronounced Z. So that's Putin's day. That's the letter, the corresponding consonant in the English language. The 20th consonant is Z. I don't know what it is in the Russian language. It doesn't matter. but the sound is Z, and everybody said Z. And that is the sound, and that is the shape of that letter in English. And it's pretty, I think it's safe to say English is, well, Chinese and, of course, any language from India. But when you're spreading it around and going around, English is pretty universal. And the 20 consonants follow the 20 days pretty good, except for the T and the P. Got to switch those two. And I wonder if that was, I don't know, I'm not going to start a conspiracy, but the T and the P, all you got to do is switch those and all the letters fall into line. The shapes are good. The pictograms are good. So there's Putin Z. And yeah, so exactly 60 days after this man, so that we call that 60. Exactly 60 on the self same day. That's how you say that. Is this guy was killed in a plane crash that looks to be very much like a sabotaged, right? Somebody sabotaged the plane, blew it up, and some people think it was a rocket. That's fine, but the very next day is the day of T-Hawks. That is the actual day of January 6th, and that is the day that Trump walked into the Fulton County Jail. Now, that's not the same type of ending, but we're going to keep watching because these energies return to their origins all the time. These actions return to their origins. And so this guy, yep, exactly 60 days. And that was the end of that. Okay, and then, yeah, like I said, the very next day. So there you go. Have a good day.